Okay, so I think that the concept of destiny and fate has something to do with the concept of karma. And that destiny isn't as linear as we depict it in our culture, right? I think that in our culture we tend to say that destiny is this straight line that goes towards the future, and it's a story that has already been written. You know, you are destined to have this experience, this exact experience 2 years from now. The seeds have already been sown. Now you just need to sort of experience it. Karma is more about the seeds are constantly being sown and the seeds are constantly being reaped, right? So, yeah, maybe many seeds were sown in the past that would mean that you are headed towards a certain event. There's a certain event that's about to happen in your life. But, you know, there are sort of, it's more plastic. There are more degrees of maneuver. There are, because again, you're sowing seeds constantly with your actions and reaping them constantly. So instead of it being more like a straight line, the concept of fate and karma seems more fractal, because things kind of develop from the present in many directions, instead of them developing from the past into the future, out of your control. I like the concept of karma because it unites free will and fate in this way. I think that a way in which this probably works is that you know, in the concept of fate, you say, oh, this specific event is going to happen 2 years. It's scripted, it's written, it's your destiny. But in a karmic way of looking at it, that event could present itself in a variety of different ways, again, depending on your actions. In this sense, the concept of karma is very similar to the concept of repression, I think, in psychoanalysis. That if you've been repressing something, it will blow up in your face. In that sense, it's fate. It's fated to blow up in your face. But you can become aware, you can integrate that repressed content. And then you see, it's not even a binary sort of thing. It's not even about, like, will it blow up in your face or will it not blow up in your face? I think that there are degrees of it. It can blow up in your face in a very hard, traumatic way, and that would imply that it's so repressed that it is experienced as something extremely disconnected from you. It is projected out as a big shadow element, or it can be integrated in varying degrees so that whatever it is that you experience is experienced more as something that you can relate to and that is a part of you. And the experience will be different depending on these things. Like, you could even say, perhaps, that it's not that you know, either experience this fated event or you don't, but that you will experience your experience and you will experience your karma no matter what. It's just to what degree will you be aware of your implication in the event, and to what degree you will refuse to look at the ways in which you are involved in this. it's kind of like this sort of hero's journey motif as well, of you descend to the underworld and kind of, in a sense, identify with the collective unconscious, right? Because I don't think it's your karma or her karma or his karma. I think that we are enveloped in actions, decisions that are being taken by many people and were taken by many people, right? If you find yourself in a difficult situation in your life that has to do with the kind of the global circumstances of politics, economy, or whatever, it's not that you were a bad person and so you find yourself in this situation. I think that's a way that this linear way of looking at fate can sometimes lead to this kind of feeling of inflation, essentially, of personal guilt through inflation, of saying, oh, if you find yourself in a war or you find yourself in a terrible traumatic accident, it was just your karma, right? There's this weird kind of individualizing of karma, of saying, oh, you know, it's your karma. You had an accident, you were destined to have that accident. No, I think that karma has a less individual dimension to it. It has an individual dimension, but it fractally accumulates in this collective way. If you find yourself in the middle of a war, it's not because you were a bad person. It's this huge accumulation of decisions taken by many people over the course of history. And so, what would it mean, in this case, for the interrelationship between karma and repression? Again, it's this going down into the collective unconscious. It's not just dealing with the repressed content of your life, like you are a liar and you have these negative addictive habits and you're not looking at them, your personal kind of stuff. No, it's that there is a way in which you can deal with repression that is collective, because this responsibility can be thrown around in many different ways. And in some cases, it's good to throw responsibility around. Like, again, if there is a war, let's say, yes, I can understand that there are sort of, let's say, human surface ways of interacting with responsibility, where if someone in a big position of power, a king, for example, has caused suffering for many people, I can understand how there is a way of placing more responsibility on the king than on yourself, for example, right? Because the king was in a position of higher power. The king's decisions caused more suffering than your decisions. You know, and it would be a weird form of inflation to consider that the war was your responsibility, right? When maybe there are kind of hierarchies of power that can be blamed, people that can be blamed at different levels. Okay, but as Carl Jung says about World War I, for example, in the Red Book, and I suppose in his commentary on on his experiences from the Red Book, there is this surface level, okay, this surface level of karma, let's say, of decisions and responsibility and fatedness and who did what and who is responsible for which actions and who needs to take responsibility for what. And that's sort of what history is doing all the time. But then there is this sort of weird underworld thing where, again, the danger of inflation is present, where every single individual can descend down into the collective karma and process it, because this kind of finger pointing is useful to a certain degree, but you can find causes eternally backwards. You can say, oh, this is my parents' fault because they didn't treat me well as a child. Oh, but their parents didn't treat them well. Why didn't their parents treat them well? Because they found themselves in a terrible economic depression that was, that drove them to a huge mental strain. And then the chain of responsibility is so big that even though there is a side to it that's more like earthly, where we can deal with these things at an earthly surface plane, in whatever way we want. But there is this underworld thing where you are in the middle of a process, a chain of karma that isn't yours, but at some level there is something that only you can do to bring it to awareness, to deal with it somehow, to integrate it, essentially, to integrate stuff that isn't strictly yours, personally yours. And anyway, to bring this back again to what I was saying about fate and karma, I find it interesting because then we tend to see fate as this linear kind of story that you're in. But I think that perhaps everything that's happening to you is karma. It's not necessarily your karma. It's your karma and the collective karma. It's karma. It's the consequences of actions, right? Everything that's happening to you is the consequence of actions. It's just that, what would it mean in this case to deal with this karma? Well, to somehow integrate it, to bring it to awareness. And that already transforms the experience you're having by weird different degrees. And escaping from this integration and projecting it further and further out will also transform the experience. So it's fated not in a linear way, because it's not like, oh, no matter what, you are going to experience this kind of an event next week. No, but if you have been ignoring certain habits that you're in, those habits are going to they are constantly generating consequences. And depending on how you navigate those habits and which decisions you take within that sort of whirlwind of habits, both yours and collective, certain fated things will express themselves in different ways. You may, and I think that even the concept of linear time somehow gets in the way of what I'm trying to say here, because I'm trying to maybe paint a picture of how the present moment is that. It's not that you have to wait until the seeds of karma bloom in the future. No, the present moment is the seeds of karma. Constantly. Now, which shape is it expressing itself in? Again, will be a result of individual and collective decisions, and is in that sense fated, right? In that sense, you're fated to be where you are now, because that's the only place you can be. The present moment is the only place you can be, and you are here not only because of your decisions, but because of greater collective decisions. And so, to bring it more to a specific example, if you have been repressing something and it blows up in your face, there is a certain kind of pressure cooker, organic quality to how this seems to happen, right? Because it's as if the pressure builds and builds and builds and then it explodes. So in a sense, you can predict to a certain degree this. There is a fated element in that it seems likely that in the near future, the pressure cooker is going to explode, right? For whatever event in your life. Like, again, maybe you sort of, you're in a specific habit that you're not looking at. But that event, that pressure cooker that's going to explode, you can see that you can extrapolate a linear concept of fate onto this, right? You could say, okay, it seems as if this is going to happen more or less in the near future, but not too far. Like you can get a sense for when that's going to happen. I mean, theoretically, because if you were aware of that, then your whole relationship with the repressed content would change. But yes, that way in which we linearize fate can be included into this picture of karma. But there is something sort of liberating and scary about this at the same time. Something liberating because I think it incorporates the concept of free will much more. Because it's not a story that was written, it's a story that is being written all the time. But on the other hand, I think it also kind of shows or suggests something that synchronicity already suggests. That is that, and that, astrology and divination suggests, that there are certain things that you are going to experience no matter what. But how you experience them will be different. You're going to experience your life now, no matter what. But how your life expresses itself to you will be different depending on how much of your psyche are you integrating. And so what's scary about that is simply that you may think that you've avoided fate, but it will come back with even more force. The more you repress something, the stronger it will come out in its toxic form. So it's as if, no matter what, somehow that experience is a part of your psyche. You can experience it in an extremely traumatic way if you push it away from yourself. And the more you push it away from yourself, the more it will change in appearance. It will be a different experience for you. And in that sense, it's not a linear fate because it changes. The event changes depending on how much you repress your relationship to it. But at the same time, it also, in this weird, that's the sort of weird alchemical thing to it, that it tends it seems that all of these experiences that are disagreeable to the ego, when they are integrated, they are yourself, and therefore in integrated form they are gold. They are what you are and what you wanted. They are your will, your want, and your self in that sense. And so, yeah, I don't know, I could go on and on, really, but I want to just start thinking about this. Yes, thank you.